to ask a question to Sean to open things up. Sean, right now, where do you stand on Texans general manager Nick Caserio? What's your gut feeling about him? He's been on the job for a couple of years. We know he wears a vest. We know he doesn't say a lot.
Okay, well, you already hit my vest point. I would say that he's kind of in that weird spot of a GM where you can't really defend, like, you can't really say, like, this is why he's doing a great job. It's just like, he's fired 2 coaches, but he also inherited a trash heap. So, but that's not really just time. Naturally, they were going to be better now than they were when he took over. Just anyone could have done that. So it is a weird, like, I don't know. He's like a 5 at scale 1 to 10.
I think he hit the nail on the head. He hasn't done anything good, but I also don't think he's done anything bad.
Yeah,
to
it's
this
just
point.
like the coaching stuff is a little weird, but
The question is, though, how much say did he really have with the coaching stuff? The one thing I know is that he is the guy who stopped the hiring of Josh McCown. He was asked about McCown, and he said no. And that started the whole divorce from Jack Easterby process. That's all I know, though. That is, I mean, this is a guy who I hate to just beat this stupid cliche or trope or joke to death. This dad joke. Yeah, he is, I mean, someone who keeps things close to the vest, which it's very appropriate that he wears the vest.
We need to come up with a different, you need to work in a different phrase.
He keeps it close to the quarter zip because he was wearing a quarter zip yesterday.
He doesn't say much.
There's that too, but I don't know. Close to the vest is so great when he actually wears a vest, Sean.
So you like the awful dad joke?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you tried to say, I wish there was a different way to say it other than this awful dad joke, but you're like, but I only say it like this.
Sean, I'm just saying that to keep the youths engaged with this show.
Okay.
I'm 33. I mean,
here, I'll get the youths in here. You're really feeling some of Caserio's riz.
Hell yeah, dude. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm not going to go off on a side tangent about how I'm feeling old after my mom said, well, maybe you don't have as many options in the dating world as you used to. Yesterday. Sean is laughing hysterically behind the glass. I mean, that was a whoa moment. I love my mom, but my God, that's the first time that my dating has ever been criticized. So anyway, let's bring it back to
Wait,
Nick
that's
Caserio.
the first time?
No, Sean. Nope. This is about the Houston Texans, okay? I don't want to share too much, but sometimes we, open the kimono and you get to see everything. I think Nick Caserio is the most polarizing sports figure currently in Houston, and I also don't think it's debatable because you could take a look at the Houston Rockets. Everyone thinks Steven Silas is a bad coach. I would say most people think Raphael Stone has been a bad general manager. There are some who love that they got all these pick swaps for James Harden. They're pick swaps. It's not extra picks. They should have got more, I think, for James Harden. If he comes back into the fold, as rumored, okay, maybe we decide to move Raphael Stone closer to the middle. As far as the Astros, is there one Astro that is disliked in this city? No, there isn't. I mean, Rafael Montero gives me anxiety, but I don't dislike him. He did pitch for the most part well last year. I am still dealing with flashbacks from Seattle. But Nick Caserio is, I think, a 5. As Sean Mapes said, he is right in the middle of the road. There are some people who think that he is on the right track. There are others who think he sucks. We're distracted from Nick Caserio, or have been for the last month, because we're in this honeymoon phase with DeMeco Ryans and we can't stop looking at him. But I imagine some of those anti-Nick Caserio folks, whether listening in your car right now or online, you are back on the warpath after hearing him talk yesterday, because Nick Caserio loves to say nothing. Here's Nick Caserio being asked about the quarterbacks in this year's draft class.
I mean, I think there's a number of players that can help different teams. They come in different shapes and sizes. So I think in the end, you got to decide, like, what's important, what do you prioritize? I'm not going to tell you what that is, but what's important to you and then how you build a team. I think when you look at what Philly did, I mean, there's a good example of how Shane and Nick kind of built their team, built an offense around what Jalen did well. So really what you want to do with every player on your team is, what do they do well? What are the things that we can give them to do well and give them the best opportunity to do that? So really that's the focus. It's not one size fits all. So you have to figure out what do you value, what's most important, and then build your team accordingly. And then give that player the opportunity to go out there and perform. And don't ask him to do something that, quite frankly, he doesn't do well.
I have no idea what he said there. I spaced out 5 seconds into that. I think a lot of people, because Nick Caserio is so unwilling to share with the class, to be transparent, have a natural distrust of him. And there are other reasons that people don't like Nick Caserio, like Patriot ties. It's that simple for some. Patriot ties. It's like being a communist or a Soviet in the 1980s. You watch ex-Patriots elsewhere, you see Bill O'Brien here, and you're like, I don't want to deal with a Bill Belichick impersonation. Another thing people don't like Nick Caserio for, Jack Easterby ties. Even though Caserio's still here, Easterby is out. Easterby's the one that brought Caserio in. And, of course, I think most people are frustrated with Nick Caserio because he hasn't drafted or signed Jesus Christ in one of his first 2 drafts or in one of his first 2 off seasons. That's probably the thing that most people are frustrated with. But this is a guy who came into an organization that was missing a lot of draft picks due to Bill O'Brien, that was in cap hell due to Bill O'Brien. This was not something that was going to be fixed overnight. I feel like there should have been a little bit more patience given his way. The problem are the things that are actually, I think, valid to criticize. In that, you look at this team the last 2 years, where has there been any progress? Nick Caserio is the one that's in charge of that progress. Where has it been? If you're mad about the other 3 things that I listed too, the Patriot ties, the Jack Easterby ties, and not finding God himself in free agency or the draft, your mind is not going to change anytime soon. You're going to have the exact same opinion for probably the entire next calendar year until next off season. Some of those criticisms I feel like are unwarranted, but you can't change that person's mind. But there are other criticisms too that I've seen. The last 2 coaching hires, black head coaches, only got 1 year and sucked. Some people are blaming Nick Caserio for that. Personally, I don't think that's fair. I don't know how involved Nick Caserio was in the last decision to hire Lovie Smith. Take a listen back to those press conferences where he's announcing the Lovie Smith hire. He doesn't seem thrilled. David Culley, I think, was the only person who wanted to take on this job given the Deshaun Watson mess. They move on from both coaches after 1 year. Do you think that was Nick Caserio, or do you think that was the ownership of the Texans, who also made the right move in moving on from both of those guys? Did you want those guys to be the long-term coach of this team? Be honest. Especially now that DeMeco Ryans is in the building. Other things that people are mad about with Nick Caserio, and I don't think this is fair either. They don't have the number 1 pick going into this year's draft. What the hell was Nick Caserio supposed to do? Was he supposed to go on the field and stop players from trying in the last game of a regular season? Was he supposed to put the entire roster on injured reserve or something like that? What was he supposed to do there? I saw someone argue, well, they should have traded Brandon Cooks at the trade deadline. They signed Brandon Cooks because they were of the belief that Brandon Cooks wanted to be here, and they gave him a contract that rewarded him for being here. $36 million guaranteed, 39 over 2 years, which is a very unmovable contract once you get into the start of the regular season, because a lot of teams start dedicating the limited cap space that they have to signing guys to help out with depth as injuries take place over the course of a year. You don't have, generally, across the league, that much money to play with once the league year starts. So when it's the trade deadline and people want Brandon Cooks to be traded, you want to get a good return for him, but you also have to realize that that contract made him very difficult to trade. That is a Brandon Cooks problem. I don't think that's a Nick Caserio problem. If Brandon Cooks hadn't played in the last game of the year, did the Texans lose? I don't know. If Laremy Tunsil hadn't played, I don't know either. The Colts are somehow, even though they're a bad football team, very capable of beating the Houston Texans at all times. Even if the Texans have a huge lead in week 1, even if the Texans had a lead at points during week 18, and even if the game went literally through an Indianapolis Colts defensive back's hands at the very end on what could have been an interception. But it's Nick Caserio's fault that they won the last game. I don't buy that. And I don't know what he was supposed to do with the salary cap when he got here either. So my question to you do you believe that the majority of Nick Caserio criticism to this point is unwarranted? I actually do. But I will hear you out. 713-780-3776, 713-780-ESPN. What is legitimate criticism of Nick Caserio to this point? It's the most interactive sports talk show in Houston. You can respond to the question of today's show on Twitter. Do you believe that the majority of Nick Caserio criticism, general manager of the Houston Texans, is an unwarranted? Political Rot on Twitter, at Gallant says, at Sean A. Mapes, at ESPN 97.5 tweeted, he should be criticized until they do something. Well, haven't they been able to do some things? I mean, the 2021 draft class, which, as Mr. Fusion on Twitter points out, was one that Nick Caserio really had only 3 months to work on with Jack Easterby in the building, is not looking good. Nico Collins is the only person who seems like he has a future with this team. I don't know that Davis Mills is going to be able to be a backup here. Could be wrong on that front, but the rest of that draft class isn't very good. But last year's draft class features Jalen Petrie, who was a player, Christian Harris, who came on strong at the end of the year, Damian Pierce, who looks like a steal as late as they got him, Derek Stingley and Kenyon Green, at the very least, got on the field. I guess how couldn't they get on the field? And then you have Tegan Quitoriano. We haven't even seen John Mechie III yet. It's a good draft class to this point. The first-round picks are definitely things to be skeptical about, but I think that was a pretty good draft, especially what Caserio and the Texans were able to find in those very crucial second through fourth rounds. As far as free agents go, I get it. They haven't signed anybody. Who the bleep are they supposed to sign? Who the hell wants to come here when the team isn't good? From the 346, Caserio's only knock was some of his low-level free agent signings. We need to see more of him in free agency. Teams don't win by building in free agency. How many times have we seen a team win the offseason only for nothing to happen? Biggest signing of last year, I brought it up yesterday, was probably the Philadelphia Eagles signing James Bradbury to a one-year, $9 million contract. It gave them arguably the best 1-2 corner tandem in the NFL last season. Moves like that are good. And by the way, did Nick Caserio not sign Jerry Hughes, who had, at age 34, 9 sacks this past year? Guy produced. He's also seemingly figured out a way to get Laramie Tunsil to want to play in Houston again. I mean, I'm not acting like Nick Caserio's done a home run job. There's still a lot to be determined. And I'm not going to disagree that he is the most polarizing sports figure in Houston either. I get why some people don't like him. But I think a lot of the criticism of Caserio to this point is unfair.